Hello, I'm Brian Sigmund with Friendship Press, and I am joined by Paul DeYoung, who is the editor of a book we have coming out in September called Howard Thurman, Reflections on a Luminous Life. Welcome, Curtis, and thanks for being here today.
Great to be with you, Brian. I'm honored to be working with Friendship Press on this new book, and excited to talk about it today.
Well, let's dive right in. First question, why is this biography of Howard Thurman important? What sets it apart from other biographies that are out there?
For a long time, there were really almost no biographies out on Howard Thurman. There was a biography written in the 1960s while he was, in the prime of his life. And then there would be sections, books about him that have a biographical section. And it's really not until the last 5-6 years that we've seen some really excellent biographies come out on Thurman. So this contributes to a small set of biographies that are out there on Howard Thurman. What makes this one most interesting, I think, was that it was written while he was alive, in conversation with him. And we have kept that sense of freshness in the book. You feel like someone is writing this as they're talking to Thurman himself. So it's got a really sense of presence and almost urgency in some sense in the way that it is written. So I think it brings something very unique. And also, James Massey was a mentee, a protege of Howard Thurman for many years. They were very close, so it also brings that sense of closeness, kind of an insider look into into Howard Thurman's life. But not only was Massey close to Thurman, Massey was also one of the first Thurman scholars that really took his work seriously as a scholar, and particularly his preaching, but beyond that as well. So this biography, which also includes a couple chapters of sort of analysis of Thurman's thought, is unique in those features.
Yeah, that was definitely something that stood out to me as I was reading the book, is that the first part of the book is really the necessary biographical details of Thurman's life, which are important enough and really fascinating. But then that sets the stage for this analysis of Thurman as preacher, Thurman as theologian, Thurman as mystic. That is just really great to hear Massey's perspective on that, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because that does shape his biography. So it's, in some sense, it's not a traditional biography, and that we get all the details of family life, childhood, etc. Some of those are there, but the biography is set up to give us the necessary information to do the interpretation and the analysis. So we hear a lot about Thurman's academic life, his life as a pastor, of course, his even from childhood, his seasons as a mystic. But the biography serves the analysis, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. So what's something that readers will find exciting or unusual about this book that you haven't talked about already?
Well, I should say that the book was unknown to many people because it was sitting in James Massey's office in a file after he died. And when his papers were organized and donated to Anderson University, the biography was discovered. And that's when we made the arrangement with Friendship Press, and the family agreed to have this published. But also was a number of letters between the two of them. I would say probably 70 at least, if not more, letters between Thurman and Massey. And Dr. Massey had kept copies of his letters to Thurman, and of course copies of the letters he received from Thurman. So we have this very rich correspondence that gives us a glimpse into their relationship that would not have been possible otherwise. And so we talk about their relationship. I write a section on their relationship through the years that kind of enriches the biography, and we also reproduce some of the letters in the book itself.
Yeah, so I wonder if you'd say a little more about the relationship between Howard Thurman and James Earl Massey. How would you characterize that relationship?
Um, so it began in the 1950s when Massey was in, I think he was in college, and he heard Thurman preach, and he connected and heard someone who had a similar sense of God and a similar sense of the Spirit. He just there was just an immediate connection. But it took him 4 or 5 years after that to actually pen a letter uh, to Thurman, and their relationship began. And it very starts out as a formal Dr. Massey, Dr. Thurman kind of relationship. I need a mentor. Can you give me wisdom and advice on this? But over the years, it becomes very deeply personal and affectionate. And as Walter Fluker notes in the foreword to the book, we have sort of lost this uh, kind of letter writing. We're in the era of email and text, and also two adult males using affectionate language to speak of their relationship with each other. And it was a relationship between the two of them, but their wives also knew each other. They connected as couples through the years. And so there was a deep personal connection, as well as, I guess one could say, an academic and spiritual connection between the two of them through the years, even to the point when Thurman died. Mrs. Thurman asked Dr. Massey to convene and to oversee the private funeral ceremony that was for the family.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That really speaks to the nature of that deepening nature of the relationship between those two men and their families.
In fact, at one point, Thurman writes to Massey, he was asked to write a letter for Massey's 25th year of ordination. And in that, he says, if I had a son,
Mm,
he would be a son like you. Thurman had two daughters. He didn't have a son. So if I had a son and I could custom make him,
mm.
he would be like you.
Wow. Wow. Not much more needs to be said after that, huh?
Exactly. In fact, that's what Thurman says. No more needs to be said.
Really? Wow. Yeah. Wow. So, you note in the book that James Earl Massey was one of your mentors. So
Yes.
not only was he a mentee of Howard Thurman, but he was your mentor as well. So, what has that relationship meant to you, and then how was that enriched by pulling this book together?
Sure. James Earl Massey and I come out of the same denomination, the Church of God, headquartered in Anderson, Indiana. And so I knew of him growing up, heard him preach. But by the time I went to university at Anderson University, he was the dean of chapel. Perhaps, as this is the late 70s, perhaps the only African American dean of chapel or campus pastor at a Christian, predominantly white Christian college. But I got to know him. He was also a professor of Bible. And then he taught later at the seminary, and I took a few courses from him there in preaching. But I met him my freshman year of college, and I was drawn to him because I was had in high school done a lot of reading of Martin Luther King and listening to LP albums of his speeches, and so I knew that, or had heard that Dr. Massey was a close friend of Martin Luther King. And so I was drawn to meet him for that reason. But very quickly, I was won over by Massey himself and what he had to offer. And so through the years, of course, it grew closer and closer, our relationship over time. But that's about a 40-year mentorship. And so we regularly were in contact, and I would visit him in his retirement years in Alabama. He spoke at different things that I invited him to, and was also close with his wife, Mrs. Gwendolyn Massey. And so he knew my family, my children, so it was personal as well as professional.
Mm,
And I should say what was most interesting. So, I now count myself as a grandson of Thurman.
yeah.
If Massey's a son, then I get to be a grandson, I think.
Uh-huh.
And so that was because obviously, if you took a class from James Massey, you got introduced to Howard Thurman.
Sure. Yeah, and that as you mentioned earlier, that there's something really important and deep about that mentor-mentee relationship. That's really important for us to recover, I think, and I think this book really helps illuminate that and the richness that's possible there.
Yeah, I believe so. And so was interesting. I never met Howard Thurman. Never heard him speak. I became mostly acquainted with him, even more so when I attended Howard University School of Divinity, and he had recently died. And of course, many of the faculty and staff there were very much into Howard Thurman. But I remember saying this to a fellow mentee of Dr. Massey. I said, "Man, I'm just sorry that I never met Howard Thurman." He says, "Oh, you've met Howard Thurman. If you've met James Massey, you've met Howard Thurman."
Wow.
And in this research and in the reading of the book and the letters, I could begin to see how similar they were and how
Mm.
much of Thurman had passed into Massey, which hopefully has affected me and my work.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So, you mentioned James Earl Massey originally wrote this book in the 1970s, and then it was never published for what 50 years. So why not? And so? First of all, why was it never published? And second, why is it important to bring this book to light now?
Sure. So we go into some detail, obviously, in the book, talking about why it was never published and the process to get to this point. But in the early 70s, uh, Massey began to write the book. He had, probably ever since meeting Thurman, had been researching and learning everything he could. But he then began you see it in the correspondence, as you read the correspondence, that he was writing a book, and he shared, the outline for the book. He would send chapters to Howard Thurman, and there was a lot of back and forth about the book. They met several times. We feature a taped conversation, which we have written out for the book. And so throughout the 1970s, and Thurman dies in 1981. So throughout the 70s, this was in process. And Howard Thurman was never fully pleased
Mm.
with the book. He believed that Massey could write it and no one else should be writing it. But I think he struggled with, is this a biography or is this an analysis of my work? Those are two different things. Massey was trying to do both. And at one point, he would recommend he does the biography. Another point, he'd recommend he does the analysis. But I'm not sure if anyone could have ever pleased Howard Thurman in the writing of a biography. And we see by the late 70s, Thurman just decides to do it himself and writes his autobiography,
Mm.
which is a magnificent piece. And so Dr. Massey really did not want to publish the book without Thurman's full embrace and approval. And amazingly, you see this in the course of the letters, the depth of their relationship was unaffected, at least appears to be unaffected, by the fact that he just never gave his full endorsement, which for some folks it would just say, "Well, I'm done with you," but they stayed in relationship in a very connected relationship. So, according to Mrs. Massey, in some conversations I had with her after Dr. Massey's death, he after Thurman died, he became the dean of chapel at Tuskegee Institute, and at that point, he basically told her, "I'm putting the book on the shelf for now."
Mm.
But he always intended for it to be published, and he and I would talk about it. I never had a chance to see it till after he died, but he talked about wanting to publish it, and so I, of course, wanted to honor that request of his, and he had asked me to kind of oversee his literary work after his death. So I got busy with that. But I also think it just because of some of the unique features of the book, one I didn't mention earlier, but in the chapter that's a interview of Massey interviewing Thurman, there's way more detail about Thurman's relationship with Mary McLeod Bethune than we've seen elsewhere. and really positions her as probably his primary or most important mentor in
Hmm.
life. And why he had not spoken in greater depth about that, I don't know. In fact, he kind of remarks, "Well, your questions are taking me in a direction that I haven't really spoken of before," but he was very eager to talk about it. So I think that in this season where there's a real renewed interest in Howard Thurman, this offers some really unique and intriguing, I guess, perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. That comment you made about how it could have really strained their relationship. I think I saw some of that in their correspondence, so I was like, man, that seems like it would have been hard to receive from on Massey's end, maybe, but it seemed like their relationship not only survived but thrived in the course of that.
Right, and Thurman didn't hold back. He was pretty
No.
blunt and harsh, and that was something that other folks who had been mentored by him said that he was a harsh truth teller.
Uh-huh.
Typically, by the time you heard the truth, you realized you needed to hear it, but it wasn't always easy to hear, and it was fun. It was interesting. We show this in the book, but as Thurman speaks more directly about his concerns or his issues, what he's written, he becomes more affectionate in his language. In
Mm.
fact, the only time he calls him Jim was in a letter where he was delivering this sort of bad news, I guess, of his viewpoint. So it was interesting the way they navigated that.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, and I think that speaks to one other additional value of the book, right? Is that we get a window into that close personal relationship between them.
Yeah, yeah, it's just remarkable.
So you mentioned earlier the connection with Anderson University and their involvement in this, and the James Massey Center for Preaching Excellence there. I wonder if you'd say a little bit about their involvement and how this book is going to continue to contribute to James Earl Massey's legacy, in addition to to the light it sheds on Howard Thurman.
Right. The with James Massey died in 2018, and so that's 8 years ago. And his he had set up with Anderson University's archives the James Earl Massey papers, but had only been able to deliver a few boxes before he was ill and then died. And so they have been waiting for a long time to receive the papers, which they received last year, I think around this time actually. And that was due to the probate process in Alabama through his death, and then a second probate process that occurred with Mrs. Massey's death, and just getting things organized. But about 50 or 60 boxes of papers were delivered to Anderson University. I had the honor of working with the family and their local pastor in Alabama, sorting through the materials and getting these delivered. So not only is this manuscript was a part of the papers and the correspondence, so that's kind of the Howard Thurman materials, but there's a whole lot of Massey's manuscripts of sermons, audio tapes of his sermons, courses he taught on preaching. He was also a New Testament scholar. He was one of the editors of the New Interpreter's Bible Commentary. So there's a whole rich mix of things. A lot of things we were surprised to find: devotionals. He wrote music. He was a very multi-talented person. In fact, the cover of the book is a painting he did, a portrait of Howard Thurman. I
Mm.
mean, I had no idea that he also painted until we found that. The archives now have the James Earl Massey's for scholars who are interested, and I know a lot of preaching scholars, but there's much more there than that. And so the James Earl Massey Center for Preaching, which is also based at Anderson University, is now launched, I think it's 2 or 3 years worth of conferences that bring folks together, use Massey's sort of approach to preaching, but feature current preachers and current professors of preaching. The Luke Powery was there recently, the dean at Duke University, dean of chapel. And so this is kind of, again, as Thurman is sort of seeing this renewed interest, James Massey is getting now renewed interest. And there was an unpublished preaching volume that was there that's in
Wow.
process now. What I understand to be published in the next year or so. So the voice of James Massey has not been silenced.
Yeah, no kidding. We're definitely happy to be a part of that and to be
Yeah,
working with you and with Anderson University to bring to bring some of this work to light for sure.
yeah.
So just now for just a couple of lighthearted and fun questions here toward the end. So what's something you learned about this book, or I'm sorry, what's something you learned through your work on this book that you didn't know before about Massey or Thurman or their relationship?
Well, certainly I assumed that they had a close relationship. Uh, Dr. Massey was very understated when he would talk about Thurman, or kind of anyone in general. I remember one time when I had him in class, he just made an offhand reference to be invited to John Kennedy's inauguration. And then he realized, oh, wow, he said, someday you'll be running in similar circles and you'll get those kinds of invitations. He was not wanting to brag or to be seen as proud or whatever. And so he's very humble and unassuming and understated. And often that's how I was about Thurman. Now, because I had known him for so many years and we talked about Dr. Thurman a lot, I certainly had a glimpse that their relationship was very close. But to see it in the letters and the kinds of ways that they shared their, I guess, affection for each other and admiration and appreciation was, was enriching, empowering, and also a similar language that I could use if I was talking about James Massey today and his relationship with me and how I felt about his relationship. Also, just the fact that both of them mentored many people. So
Mm.
the kind of, I mean, the fact that they wrote that many letters, is he writing that many letters to a lot of other folks too? I mean, their commitment to spiritual formation, their commitment to creating a cadre of leaders. I mean, as we know, Thurman was really, in many ways, the mentor of many of the faith-based civil rights movement leaders. There was a sense of calling. Massey had a similar kind of role in his mentoring in the broader church, particularly of young preachers.
Mm.
And so, delving into this work and getting to kind of relive my relationship with Dr. Massey increased my appreciation for the gift that he has been to me and to many others.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that's a yeah, just to see kind of the depth of that mentoring, both deep and wide, right? Like there's a
Right.
depth of their mentor relationship, but that also influenced so many others,
Yeah.
especially with Thurman. Yeah.
I should also add they both had a sense of humor,
Mm.
which comes out occasionally. But I had a chance to listen to the audio uh, tape on an old cassette tape that we transcribed for the book, and the I mean it's kind of like when you get two highly educated intellectual mystics in the same room. The stuff they laugh about might be different than what we laugh about, but they definitely had a good sense of humor and enjoyed each other as human beings.
Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure. So, last question. What do you hope readers will take away from this book? How do you hope this book will impact them?
I certainly hope that the story of this relationship will inspire the content of Thurman's life and his thinking will inspire. But hopefully, this will encourage people to do their own reading of Howard Thurman's books and James Massey's books. They both have, a number of books out and in a full range. Thurman wrote some wonderful books of meditations, devotionals. He was also a social commentator in many ways on issues of race and justice in his time. Although Thurman, and I say this about Massey as well, wrote in a way that was timeless. So what you read may have been written 50 years ago, but you go, wow, that really applies to today. Massey has written a number of books on commentaries, written biblical commentaries. Certainly, I think he has 5 books out on preaching. So the richness of their own work, I hope that this book will inspire people to look at the fuller corpus of their works and get to the firsthand sources in that sense. But I hope it'll inspire people also who are of a certain age to be mentoring and to looking to the next generation and investing in the next generation that's coming up in the church or in the community or we are certainly the first 25 years of the 21st century. We've had a lot of activism, whether it be Black Lives Matter or climate justice or other kinds of justice issues. And Thurman was intentionally engaging himself with those who were the young leaders, seeking to be their sounding board, taking phone calls in the middle of the night to encourage them. And Massey has a similar kind of relationship with the folks he mentored. So, and also that younger people will look for and find mentors. You don't have to go it alone. You can find folks who will walk with you. And mentoring in its best sense is a two-way street. The quote-unquote mentor often gains and learns from the person that he or she is mentoring as much as they give. It's a really enriching kind of relationship. So hopefully that we'll actually see the value of mentoring in greater and expanded ways.
Well, that's definitely a great note to end on. I think that is so important and so needed, not just for individual lives, but for the kind of work that we all hope to do in the world. That we can be enriched by those who have gone before us and who have some wisdom to teach us, but then also that we can then enrich others by passing on what we've learned. This book is called Howard Thurman, Reflections on a Luminous Life. And so I think that luminous life speaks to how it can illuminate just so many other people. So we hope you will check the book out. It's from Friendship Press, Howard Thurman, Reflections on a Luminous Life. It'll be available on September 15th. Thank you, Curtis, for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian.